Alright, what is up, guys? We're doing a little experiment here today. So, as some of you guys may know, I upgraded cameras to a new Sony camcorder that records in either 1080p at 60 FPS or 4K at 30 FPS. And I'm really happy with the visual performance of this camera. It was a huge step up, and even though the file size of the videos is tremendous, regardless of what genre of content I'm trying to create, I think sticking with the 60 FPS 1080p is the best way to go because 4K is still really not consumer practical for a lot of people viewing YouTube, but it was a nice way to future-proof the production quality of a lot of my future content. The downside is that the onboard microphone, which are always notoriously bad, was placed in an even more precarious place on this camera than the previous one I was using. So it sounded even worse than the onboard microphone on the previous camera that I was using. So I decided, well, I need some solution for this for all of my videos that are shot, in live action with this camera. And so right now I am also simultaneously recording this audio on a XLR condenser microphone that is hooked up directly into my computer, and I'll just be syncing the audio in post and hopefully giving you guys a better production quality in terms of visuals and sound now with this current setup. So far from the tests I've done, I am not satisfied with the overall quality of this XLR microphone. I need to probably mess with some settings and some placement of it. I noticed that the S sounds of my voice sound really muffled, strangely, and I'm just not entirely satisfied with the way it sounds. But I think we can all agree it objectively sounds a lot better than the onboard microphone on this camera that I was using before. So with all that out of the way, we are back doing more Transformers reviews. So again, I am not a huge Transformers collector right now. I'm not one of the hyper collector whale buyers that buys every single new figure from every single new line, but I have a pretty extensive collection going mostly back to the 2007 movie line and a few kits from Armada and Cybertron, some G1 toys as well. And so I'll have quite a few figures to review for quite some time, and this will be a nice little break in between Zoids content to have something else to review in between so that I don't run completely out of Zoids content. My collection is reaching its maximum capacity, so it's one of those things where I'm not necessarily desperately looking for more content, but it's one of those things where I've always wanted to get back into talking about Transformers toys, and I've decided I'm going to, split between doing a Transformers video here and a Zoids video there, so that everybody is satisfied at the end of the day. So this one we're taking a look at today is the Leader Class Optimus Prime from the original 2007 Transformers movie line. Specifically, this is the Nightwatch Prime from the All-Spark Blue line they did at the beginning of 2008. 2008 was a really interesting time for Transformers because they had just come off of the coattails of the live-action movie, which was a huge commercial success, and they were getting ready to debut Transformers Animated, so you had almost 3 separate toy lines going on at the same time, which all had very high production quality. You had the 2007 movie line, you had the animated line, and you had the start of Generations Classics, which was basically Classics 2.0, and the next version of Universe would be shortly after that. And so you had a lot of great figures that came out in 2008, and the bulk of my collection is from that year. And so Nightwatch Prime here was, simply a repaint of the original Leader Class from that movie line. And I never was able to afford the original Leader Class from that line. I opted to go for the Voyager instead, which we'll talk about. If you guys saw my collection video of the Studio Series movie anniversary collection, I did talk about the movie Voyager already. But I decided, because I already had the movie Voyager, if I were to get a movie Leader, it was going to be specifically Nightwatch Prime because I loved this color combination. The black and silver looks just so awesome with this bluish green here, and the purple inside the translucent pieces there in the cabin and in the headlights as well. And when I first got this guy, I actually got him from a local place called Steel Collectibles, which is a place that I get a lot of my Transformers from nowadays because they have people that trade them in secondhand. I got him at the beginning of 2021. My wife, of course, Michelle, when she saw this thing, she was like, "That is the coolest color scheme for a Transformer I've seen in your collection." She said, "If I were to have a dream car, it would literally be a car with this exact color deco, like this combination of black and silver flames and this sort of teal aqua uh, green going on right here." So very, very appealing, and not something we've ever really seen before on an Optimus Prime. I mean, there's been repaints before. The Voyager had the repaint in the G1 colors, and the Leader had a couple of re-releases that were slightly retooled, which we'll get into a little bit when we get to robot mode. But this was the only major repaint for that Leader class Optimus Prime, at least over here in the West, as far as I know. So, once again, this was released in 2008 as part of the Allspark line. And the Allspark line was really only there as a way to repaint certain figures from the movie line and from the Cybertron line, oddly enough, and give the characters from the movie line a specific color deco with this light blue color that I guess Hasbro had like copywritten as the Allspark blue. It was very strange, and it resulted to where the paint applications of the Allspark blue on this toy are actually missing from the international releases and replaced with some black and gold, which do look really good. But I don't know, I don't know what the deal was with that. There's actually like a little bit of lore that they tried to do with the Allspark line, where they tried to have it have like a little bit of a storyline that wasn't really canon with the movie. But I guess the Allspark power that Prime gets allows him to have sort of a night stealth mode where he can move quickly and quietly, and he also has like some Allspark super powered punch attack or whatever, which I think is really silly. But it's cool they tried to go with some lore with that, even though it wasn't really all that expounded on. So with all that out of the way, we can really talk about this toy in detail. So as far as the truck mode goes, I think this is one of the nicest alt modes of any Transformer I've put my hands on in the last several years. And it really puts into perspective how much the design sensibilities have changed over the years. I know I talked about the Studio Series Voyager one and how I just couldn't stand that truck mode, and I think it is an atrocity. And we'll do a comparison with that as well. But comparing them, I mentioned before how the Studio Series one has like these tiny smokestacks that don't come up past here, which is something that Transformers as a brand was going through around this time. And yet for some reason, this toy got away with it. They just had to be, rubbery and flexible, but they look perfectly good. And then as we bring in the Voyager here, the Voyager has them as well, and they're just hard plastic, and they stick up just fine. Now, there are a couple things that maybe are a little anachronistic as a truck, such as the way the top of the cabin up here pieces together, and of course the back of it. But overall, it comes together really nicely, and it actually has like a good looking trailer hitch back here, which is something a lot of the modern ones struggle with. It has actually like a complete looking bumper back here, although this could use some paint applications. At least it is there and not just weird robot parts kind of crammed together to make you kind of look away from it and ignore it. It does have the gun sticking out back here, which is a little bit of a downside. And, I'm not really saying anything that anybody's not already a little familiar with, because a lot of people had this mold. This mold was incredibly popular back in the day, which is why I didn't have the original Leader class, because I couldn't find it and couldn't afford it secondhand. So the fact that I got this thing used last year was really cool. Coming around to the front, like I said, all of the details just come together wonderfully. The grille looks good. The translucent headlights look good. You got a little Autobot logo right there. The purple translucent right in here. It just looks incredible, and it rolls incredibly well. It has rubber tires, which is something that a lot of toys got away from after this era. Outside of things like Masterpiece level stuff, you didn't see rubber tires on anything anymore. So all of his tires are extremely high quality and detailed, and they look nice, and it just rolls so smoothly. And they were able to get all this detail and all this functionality in here and still have the lights and sounds. So he does have a electronics sound box in there. And I just think this thing is immaculate. It is it really is a pretty much perfect alt mode. And of course, we'll do the comparison one more time. I think that the Voyager one is really nice as well. This Voyager is probably not going to get its own video now, thanks to the fact that I've talked about it in this video and in the Studio Series one. I get that the Voyager, once again, has some anachronistic details that are probably not true to this what this truck would look like in real life. The fact that the top of the cabin is slanted weirdly like that. That's to kind of give Prime his knees in the robot mode. This one doesn't look that bad either. It really has all the right details it needs to have. The front grille could use some paint, but it does have the same translucent headlights, and it has the Autobot logo that is in red with silver paint applications, which is awesome. And it even has this little gimmick here where you can open the door and the little hologram driver will act on a spring and go back inside the cabin like that, implying that it disappears. And it's even like a little trucker with like a cowboy hat, which is reminiscent to some stuff in G1. And then lastly, of course, we have the Studio Series 1. Like I said, the Studio Series, the robot mode looks really impressive and a lot more screen accurate. The toys from this era really had a problem with screen accuracy, and you can't really blame them because the designs of the robots were so ridiculous and over the top that it was hard to get them to translate into toys, especially with electronics in mind. But they did a pretty good job overall, but now we're really kind of seeing the newer toys get the robot modes to look a lot more accurate. But this alt mode is a travesty. Like, it just looks terrible. Yes, it does have the front grille is painted in silver and the blue is a little bit better, but the smokestacks are short. The feet are just right there on the back, and even though they tried to make a little trailer hitch right there, it just looks nothing like a real truck. It has just too much kibble with the feet there. Huge gaps down here. The wheels look terrible. The wheels don't look like a real truck at all. And then as you can see, my grille doesn't fit together very well because after I made the Studio Series video, a peg that allows the front grille to tab in snapped off. And I thought about gluing it back on, then I just decided, it's really not even a good idea because it's under so much tension as it is just under this thing's design. I really don't think that I personally made a huge mistake there. I think it's just straight up a design flaw. And I've seen that on some other people that have done videos on this thing. If you look at That Toy Guy, his video on the Studio Series collection, his is like this as well. He didn't say in the video that he snapped his front grille off, but or the little peg that connects the front grille together, but I'd be willing to bet that's what happened. So yeah, in terms of the alt modes, these older ones win like in every possible way compared to the modern Studio Series one. But it's a tough call. I wouldn't really say that the Voyager or the Leader is better as far as the old ones go, because they do what they do very well, respective to their respective price range and part count and all that. So with that out of the way, we'll move on to Prime's robot mode. All right, so we're ready to show off Prime in his robot mode, but before I get to the end of it, normally I want to do transformations off screen in these videos, and that's a style that it seems like it's kind of 50-50 on in this community of Transformers content creators, is half of them do the transformation on screen and half of them do it off screen, unless there are certain particular exceptions. And of course, like I said, this is going to be one of them. So I wanted to show off the automorph technology, which is something that this particular toy line was known for, and it was something that got stuck in the vocabulary of Transformers fans and collectors for years afterwards. So the first bit of automorph has to do with the feet, the front of the grille. If you move this panel right here of the front bumper downward like this and open up these panels, you can then rotate it and it automatically flips forward the toes. Same thing on the other side here, which is pretty cool. The Voyager also has quite a bit of automorph as well, and that gives him a nice big heel spur to support all this weight, because he is a hefty boy. And then I had to move the camera up slightly and push him back a little bit just to get him all in the frame here. I didn't realize he was going to be this tall. The final one has to do with the electronics. So if we push this lever down here, the chest pops open, his head comes up, and we get the lights and sounds. And we can get that sound over again with the button up here. Well, actually, maybe the button doesn't do it, but if you move down the lever, you get the sound again, which is pretty cool. So here he is in robot mode, and it is pretty impressive. It is very typical of leader classes of that era, which is they were very large, had some gimmicks. were very heavy, had a lot of articulation on ratchet joints, but were surprisingly well articulated as well. And I think that this one and the Leader Class Brawl from the original movie line are held in very high regard. The Leader Class Megatron, not so much. That one was a little bit too gimmicky and was a bit of a brick in terms of his articulation, and also had a really disappointing alt mode. But the Prime and the Brawl are both very, very well loved and highly regarded. So he is actually extremely well articulated. He does have, ratcheted hips, which are very, very nice and tight. Ratcheted knees as well, which are extremely tight. And ratcheted shoulders, elbows. I think he actually technically has double jointed elbows because of his transformation. His individual fingers on his hand are articulated as well, which is something you definitely do not see every day. And you nowadays really don't even see on leader classes at all. And it was something pretty revolutionary for this toy when it came out. You really only saw that with like Supreme classes like Ultimate Bumblebee, or with Masterpiece toys like 20th Prime, who I think is also known as MPO1. The fingers are only articulated at the knuckle, so you only get the one range of articulation. You don't get each individual digit moving, and then his thumb is on a ball joint. But still a lot you can do with that. And then the weapon over here, there should be a bar you can slide to get the gun to fold over his hand like that, which, again, the gun looks pretty good. I'm not mad about it at all. The way his shoulders fold in kind of gives him butterfly joints, which is something pretty cool. Lots of people were kind of scratching their head about the gun when this guy first came out, because they were like, well, why doesn't he have a sword? Because that was what he used to much more iconic recognition in the movie. And so there actually was a fan mod of this toy when it first came out to replace the gun with a sword. And then I think they actually did a reissue of this guy before the Revenge of the Fallen version came out that did actually do some remolding and replaced the gun with a sword. So I think there actually is an official release of this leader class mold with the sword instead. But then most other leader class Optimus Primes after this did come with a sword for the movie line. I know that the Revenge of the Fallen leader class is considered the GOAT by a lot of people. It's considered like the best movie Prime, but I didn't really collect any Revenge of the Fallen. I didn't really collect any movie line toys after the first movie, with the exception of the Rescue Ratchet that I showed off in the other video, which I learned is Hunt for the Decepticons. It's not even Dark of the Moon. So I have 0 Revenge of the Fallen toys, 0 Dark of the Moon toys, 0 Age of Extinction and so on, 0 Human Alliance and all that stuff. I really only collected this original movie toy line, and I'll probably keep it that way because a lot of them don't seem all that appealing to me in hindsight. I kind of prefer the Unicron trilogy look and the G1 style look, so a lot of the Universe and Generations style figures are the ones I like to collect now. But I do have a very high fondness for this original movie line. He's not perfect, obviously. He's very heavy, so it does make him difficult to pose. And he does have some clunky bits and kibble on the back. The way the wheels fold up, it's not super intuitive, and I actually don't match right now on mine. I should probably fix that a little bit. But they tab in to the back of his legs like that, but then this tire right here just kind of rests there, and there's nothing really you can do with it, which kind of gets in the way of posing the legs. The way all of this folds up and tabs in is really well designed, but there's no real way to get it out of the way. It still is a bulky backpack, which is something that a lot of movie line Optimus Primes did suffer from, so it's kind of to be expected. And then to kind of compare to the Voyager one more time, obviously he's quite a bit bigger than the Voyager 1, needless to say. The head sculpt is a little bit different. The head sculpt is appealing on both of them, but I would say the head sculpt on the Voyager is slightly more detailed and has slightly bigger antennas, but I think that might be because they had to fit the light functionality into the leader class one, so there's a little bit of a compromise there. The Voyager handles its kibble a little bit better in the sense that there's less of it, but it is concentrated in a particularly egregious way, which is the whole front of the truck is just kind of hanging off the back there, as you guys can see. The leader class one has more kibble, but it's more evenly distributed throughout the robot mode. The head is articulated as well, in spite of the electronics being in there. It only goes back about this far. It doesn't go a full 360, not that you would really need it to, and it doesn't have any kind of light piping or anything like that because of the electronics function. These pieces up here move as well, and maybe you prefer them to be kind of out at an angle like that, but they kind of flop down if that's the case. So I just kind of like to keep them straight up. And then these right here on the side are on ball joints, whereas they just kind of flop up and down on the Voyager, which is not ideal, but they look fine regardless of where you decide to put them. The Allspark blue, like I mentioned, is these pieces right here in the center of his chest and on his shoulders. And like I said, those paint applications are not there on international versions of this toy. And it's a really strange gimmick they went with, but I don't think it looks that bad. It actually is a pretty appealing color on most of the toys they decided to put it on. My favorite, I think, is Cliff Jumper, which I showed off in that other Studio Series video. So I like that one quite a bit. The way these panels that form the top of the front of the truck, the way they kind of fold together and become his knees is a little bit awkward to kind of keep them tabbed in. But as long as they're collapsed, they don't look too bad. And they do kind of, look like knee pads, even if they stick out a little far and is a little bit awkward. But yeah, overall, I like this guy quite a bit. Once again, there's been several other leader class movie primes that have come out since this guy that maybe you prefer more. But I was really nostalgic for this one, and I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to pick one up after all these years, because I never had this one when it was new. And so the opportunity all these years later to finally go back and get the exact version of the toy that I wanted was pretty cool. So definitely glad that I had this guy in the collection. I have several other movie line toys I'll want to review, as well as ones from other lines as well. So there's definitely going to be more of this where that came from. But that's probably all I have to say about the Leader Class Nightwatch Prime. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.